Yeah, good to see you all here. Welcome, welcome. If you're a guest with us, special welcome to you. My name is Paul. As Penny said, I use a lot of exclamation marks. Now I'm going to have to check on that. Is that too many? Oh, man. Okay. I like being called out. That's good. Wonderful. It's good to have you all here. I love all ages services. It's great to have all our generations in one room to celebrate and to hear from one another, to worship together. It is a magical time. So I will just say, if you're a kid or a youth, actually anybody. I was going to say it's just for kids, but it's for anybody because it's all ages. There are tally sheets at the back, so it's a way to just kind of keep engaged in the message. And it's like I'll say certain words, and if you hear them, you mark it down. And at the end of the service, in the lobby, we have some treats, some prizes for you if you do that. So don't forget the tally sheets. You can grab them in the entrance there. There's lots and lots there. So we are celebrating Thanksgiving, we are having all ages service, but also today we are concluding our series at the table. And in this series we have been exploring the power of hospitality in the life of Jesus. Throughout the series we have seen how he has welcomed outsiders, challenged the self-righteous, restored the broken, and really built the community at the table. And it's no small detail that Luke's gospel, which is what we've been primarily looking for or at in this series, Jesus is almost always at a meal in this gospel, or he's on his way to a meal, or he's leaving a meal. It's a very important detail that Luke wants us to see through this series and through his gospel, that this was the how of Jesus' ministry. It was always through meals. The Son of Man came eating and drinking. So speaking of meals, last week I boldly declared that vareniki and pierogies are Ukrainian food, not Mennonite. And I heard a boo. Okay, well, I had a lot of feedback in the lobby. There were some boos after. I had a lot of people that were very passionate about pierogies, and they approached me, confronted me with their truth. And we had good conversations. But one comment really stood out to me and stopped me in my tracks, I'll be honest. Someone came up and said, Paul, just by the way, whenever somebody says, and they add your name, it's going to be a good conversation. And they said, Paul, whether they're Ukrainian or Mennonite, I'm not really sure that's even the question or that's really even the conversation, because in the end, they're all just Asian dumplings. And dang it, they're right. It's hard to predate Asian dumplings historically. That's really true. So thank you. Thank you for confronting me. Thank you for being so passionate about pierogies. What a community. We're going to have some kind of dumplings pierogi night or something to keep this going. It was very good. Meals tell a story of life, friends. And all of you are passionate about pierogies. So as we conclude our journey today, I want to bring us to one of my absolutely favorite stories in the Bible. A story that, for me, captures the heart of life at the table. It really captures what this life at the table is really all about. In fact, this is my 4th year at Lakeview, and I found a way to teach on this lesson, on this story out of the Bible each year. I sneak it in every time because I love this story, and I can't stay away from it. And honestly, every time I read it and write about it, there's new things that God keeps revealing. And isn't that an amazing thing about the Bible, is that God, you can read the same passage, the same story, and God makes something new available for us to pick, to notice, to understand. And so that has been that way for me for this story, and maybe as we go through, you'll see why. And this story really begins with a very human experience that I think all of us have experienced in one way or another. Like, for example, have you ever had that moment where you're looking for things and you just can't find them, and you're looking, and then somebody comes into the room and they're like, it's right there. And it's right in front of you. It's like your keys, your glasses. Maybe you're looking in the fridge for that ketchup and you just can't find it. And you're like, Jessica, where's the ketchup? Maybe you don't say Jessica, whoever it is in your life. And they're like, it's in the fridge. And you're like, it's not in the fridge. I have eyes, I'm looking, it's not there. And then they come in and they're like, it's right there. And you're like, oh, it's behind the mustard. Who would have thought? I have these moments all the time. Or maybe you had a moment where you bump into a person and you're like, they say hello and you don't really know who they are and you can't connect the dots, and you should know them, but you don't know them. And it takes a while, and you're like, and eventually it all kind of, the penny drops and you're like, oh, you're so-and-so. And you have a laugh about it of some sorts, I hope, at the recognition of somebody. And we laugh at these moments, but they kind of reveal something deeper in us, don't they? They kind of reveal that recognition isn't just about eyesight. Sometimes we see and we still don't see. It's surprising how often this happens, even with people we know, especially when we're not expecting them or they show up looking different than we remember or how we imagine them. And we have this moment like, I think I know you, but I don't know you. So let me, if you haven't had those moments, let me give you an example. And kids and youth, we're going to have some before and after photos here. And just to see if you can recognize who these famous people are. And so let's just throw the first person up on the board. There's a before picture. They'll come up right away here. I'm hoping. There we go. There's a before picture. Now, do any of you know who this is? Kids, youth, adults, you can yell it out. Do you know who this is? The Rock. Yes, that's right. Let's go to the next. Absolutely. It's Dwayne The Rock Johnson, the famous person. You reckon it. That's really good. Wow. Okay. I did not expect you guys to get that. How many of you know The Rock looked like this? Wow. Okay. Let's go to the next before picture. Who is this lovely person here? We see on a holiday in the United States, obviously. Yeah, before. Huh? Okay, let's see. Who is it? It's Chandra. It's our associate pastor. Yeah. What a wonderful picture. Okay, let's check out another one. Let's see another one. How about this person? Who is this? What's that? Aiden? Some people said Aiden. Okay, well, let's see who it is. Oh, it's Kim. It's Kim, family formations pastor. Wonderful. Oh, let's keep it going. Let's see. Who's the next person we see before? Okay, this is going to be the hardest one. It's going to be very hard. Very, very hard, okay? Do you guys know who this is? Paul? I mean, it's uncanny, but no, not Paul. Okay, let's see. After it's super, this is hard. The one picture has glasses, and the other picture he doesn't. It's a really hard one. Clark Kent, Superman. People don't know this. With glasses, different person. All right, here we go. We have this bearded cowboy here with a gun. There's a lot of laughter going on. I love it. Okay, let's see after. Of course, it's our worship pastor, Aiden. The beard is still there, still fully solid. No gun. All right, let's check out the next one. Who we got here? Oh, look at this studious young man. Some of you have very awesome spouses who share pictures. Look at this young man, just ready to learn. It's Dallin. It's our youth pastor. It's Dallin. Of course. Do we have another one here? Let's go. Oh, who's this person peeking around the corner? Who is it? Let's see. Let's check it out. It is Scotty, our kids pastor. Wonderful. Okay, let's go. Let's keep it going. Oh, look at this wonderful picture. Who's this? Paul. It's Darlene. It's our spiritual formation pastor, Darlene. Wonderful. Okay, let's go. Oh, look at this 70s heartthrob. Now, obviously, it's a picture from the 70s. So who is this person? Yeah. Oh, it's Curtis. Curtis Anderson. Wow. Okay. Oh. Sorry, how did that get in there? That's not supposed to be. Look at that. Just that eye contact. Honestly, friends, sometimes we don't recognize someone even when they're in our midst. Yeah, let's maybe move on from this. Okay, good. All right. So thank you for letting us have a little laugh. But sometimes we don't recognize people even when they're in our midst. Sometimes they've changed, they've grown up. Sometimes they just dress differently. Sometimes a different haircut. Sometimes it's just a lot of different things. And that's honestly exactly what is happening in my favorite story in Luke 24. Now, the context of our story is that it's the same day that the women have found the tomb empty. It's the resurrection day. The women went and found that Jesus is not there. And then they ran and told the disciples what happened, but no one really believed them. And Luke just, in his gospel, tells us that Peter ran off and he checked for himself and found the tomb empty. And he walks away amazed, but still kind of confused. And now Luke tells us that on that very same day, 2 disciples are walking to a village called Emmaus, which is about 7 miles west of Jerusalem. And so they are talking through everything that's happened. They're on their way, they're walking, and they're talking about some heavy things, actually. They're talking about betrayal. They're talking about the cross, the death. And significantly, we're invited to note that they're sharing this stuff, but they're almost venting about a bunch of these shattered hopes in their life. And they're disoriented, and they're disappointed, and they're trying to make sense of a story that no longer makes sense. And then Luke, kind of like nonchalantly and casually, tells us that Jesus himself comes near and begins to walk with them. So Jesus is on the journey, on this Emmaus road, which is about 7 miles. He joins his disciples and he's walking with them as they're talking about their grief, as they're talking about their shattered hopes. And he just joins in. And amazingly, we learn that they're prevented from recognizing him. They actually don't recognize it as Jesus who's walking with them. And he walks with them and he listens to their sorrow, but he also pushes back on them. He begins to teach the scriptures. He begins to unveil to them and talk about that that the scriptures all along have been talking about the suffering Messiah that was going to come. And he's explaining this to them, but they still don't realize who he is. It's only later when they invite him into their home and sit down for a meal that everything changes. So let's read that part right now in Luke 24. So by this time, they were nearing Emmaus and the end of their journey. I love this part. Jesus acted as if he was going to go, as if he were going on, like so he pretended. But they begged him, "Stay the night with us, since it's getting late." So he went home with them. And as they sat down to eat, he took the bread and blessed it. Then he broke it and gave it to them. Suddenly, their eyes were opened and they recognized him. And at that moment, he disappeared. It's a wild story. Jesus is walking with two disciples who are sorrowful, who are disorientated, who are talking about all the events that have happened, this death, this thing, all the stuff. And he joins them and they don't know who he is. But yet when he breaks and blesses the bread, their eyes are open and they recognize him. It's not in his sermon, it's not in his theological explanation that Jesus was giving them about the suffering Messiah. It's at the table that their eyes are finally open. It's around the bread and the blessing, the breaking of the bread, that they see Jesus for who he truly is. And friends, this is no accident. Luke is deliberately showing us that the presence of God is revealed at the table. He's done it in our journey, right? We've looked at it through the entire stories of the meals. It's in this simple sacred act of hospitality that again and again in these meals that God's kingdom breaks into ordinary life. Not only in the stories we have explained and looked at in the series, but there's actually a lot more that happen in Luke with meals. Like, for example, the miraculous feeding of the 5,000, where Jesus multiplies the bread and the fish as he teaches about the kingdom of God. Or maybe the parable of the prodigal son, where the feast celebrates the young son's return while the older brother refuses to join the banquet his father is hosting. For Luke, who's showing us this, meals sit at the very center of the story of life. And again, it's at the table in a simple act of sharing food, offering welcome, that the presence of God becomes most tangible and visible. Luke is continually revealing to us that hospitality is the soil in which evangelism grows. So in this meal with the disciples, Luke is deliberately drawing together the echoes of all those other meals that have come before, each one preparing the way. But perhaps most importantly, he draws our attention back to one decisive meal where the same pattern unfolds. Jesus takes the bread, blesses it, breaks it, and gives it. It's the meal we reflected on last week, the Passover meal, where Jesus shared with his friends and then began to reinterpret Israel's story around himself, instituting what we call now the Lord's Supper. It was at that table in Jerusalem where Jesus had revealed God's plan to heal and redeem the world, but not through power or conquest, but through himself, the Lamb of God, whose body would be broken and whose blood would be poured out for the life of the world. But here at Emmaus, the meaning actually deepens even more. Because here, in the breaking of the bread that night, Jesus is revealed not only as a long-awaited Messiah, but as the one who truly knows us. On this side of the cross, Jesus is the one who truly understands us. The Emmaus meal and the disciples finally seeing Jesus for who he is reveals something deeper here. He's no longer a distant, untouchable king. He's no longer a Messiah that they can't understand. He's one who's in their presence. He's the Savior who has walked the same dusty roads as we walk. He's the Messiah who has tasted hunger and grief. He's the Messiah who has felt the ache of disappointment and the weight of sorrow as they have. He's the one who understands our confusion, our crushed hopes, our longing for things to be made right. He's the Messiah who understands suffering. On this side of the cross, in this meal, as they see Jesus for who he is, he's the one who has tasted and seen their pain. And isn't that what our hearts most ache for when life unravels? Isn't that what we hope for as well? Not someone who has quick fixes or religious platitudes, but someone who says, I've been there. I know what you're going through. Someone who carries the scars of his or her own and meets us not with judgment, but with compassion. You see, in this meal at Emmaus, in Jesus, God's presence is not just holy, it's mysteriously deeply human and profoundly empathetic. He's the one who both redeems and relates. He sits beside us in our pain and says, I know this. I know your pain, and I'm with you. He's the one who walks with the brokenhearted, who lingers with the confused, who listens to our questions and enters our grief. And Luke tells us that it is here, in the ordinariness of shared meal, that heaven touches earth. It is here in the breaking of bread that the risen Christ is finally recognized. And this Emmaus Road story, this Emmaus meal, isn't just a story about then. This is still how Jesus shows up now. He still shows up at the table of our homes. He shows up at the tables when we sit at restaurants, when we have potlucks, barbecues. He shows up when we're at church. He shows up when we slow down to eat and talk and truly listen. He still shows up in the ordinary, in all of our moments of life, in all of our laughter and our tears, in bread and blessing. Whenever we make room for hospitality and welcome, Jesus shows up. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've been in ministry roughly for 24 years in one way or another, and I know the church can be messy and complicated and frustrating, and for good reasons. But then there's moments when I look around the table and realize this strange, beautiful gathering of people who would never have found one another apart from Jesus. And so I see Jesus show up in our diversity, in all our generations, in all our ages, in our cultures, in the stories that are stitched together here at Lakeview. I see him in the quiet, unseen acts of love and forgiveness. I see him in the patience, in a patient grace that goes unnoticed or unthanked. I see him in the hearts that begin to hope again, and in honest questions that reach for something deeper. The disciples on Emmaus Road had said, we had hoped he was the one to redeem Israel. You see, they hoped for someone else. Their hopes were shattered because they were hoping for someone else. They were still imagining a completely different Messiah. Their imagination was of a powerful king who would come with political glory to save them, a conquering king. But Jesus shows up as someone entirely different. And perhaps the question we have to wrestle with today is, what kind of king are we hoping for? See, Jesus reveals God. Jesus is God. Jesus reminds us that the future of the church will never be secured by grasping for cultural power or chasing influence. The church was never meant to look or act like Rome. It just wasn't. Jesus instead shows up as one of us and then invites us to join him in what he's still doing. Renewing all things, healing all things, restoring all things, one meal, one conversation, one act of grace and love at a time. Jesus reveals and shows us that this is not ethereal, out there kind of hope. It's tangible. It's practical. This act of joining God in renewal of all things is literally achievable by living in the way of Jesus, in the act of hospitality, of inviting others to the table, of having conversations, of being curious, of hearing people's stories. Jesus shows up. And when we gather at the table, when we invite others in, and when we truly listen, it is moments where heaven touches earth. In Gospel of Matthew, we read this. Then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you invited me into your home. I was naked and you gave me clothing. I was sick and you cared for me. I was in prison and you visited me. Then these righteous ones will reply, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you? Like, when did we give you a meal, Jesus? Or when did we see you thirsty and give you something to drink? Or a stranger and show you hospitality? Or naked and give you clothing? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the king will say, I tell you the truth. When you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me. Meals are tangible and practical ways to be in the presence of God. The king shows up as one of us. And in every act of hospitality and generosity, it turns out to be for him. This is why hospitality at the table matters, friends. The king says, whenever you do this to the least of these, you're doing it to me. Whenever you gather, whenever you come together at the table, whenever you hear a person's stories, whenever you give them dignity and hospitality, whenever you feed them when they're hungry, give them drink when they're thirsty, when you care for someone, you're doing it for God. There are many people walking the road and not recognize that Jesus is right beside them. They're looking for ethereal, spiritual experience somewhere out there, which is fine, that's okay. But our God is tangible and practical, and he's right there with us. And he says, invite somebody, feed them, offer them a drink. So as we conclude our series today, let me offer a few simple invitations for us. Could you invite someone for a meal this week? Or even just a coffee or a snack? It might seem small, but God often does his most significant work in the ordinary, everyday moments like that. Would you join someone and be curious about them? Listen to their story and be present. Could you do that? Could you create space for someone at your table? And if you are on the other side of that, if you get invited, could you accept an invitation to someone's table to hear their story? Jesus says, this is where you will see me. Could I also here's another invitation, invite you, if you're not part of one yet, our home church. Can I encourage you to join in? Home churches is our small gatherings of people here from Lakeview who build relationships together. They shape their own rhythms of like when they can meet, but they gather, they share meals, they engage in spiritual practices, they spend time building relationships and maybe unpacking the Sunday's message and praying for one another. Can I invite you to join in, friends? I'm going to name a few more things, but I don't want to sound like an infomercial. We're creating spaces like this because we believe Jesus is to be met in these spaces. We believe when we gather around a meal, when we invite people to a table, that Jesus is there. When you do any of this to the least of these, you do it to me. Can I suggest maybe to join a men's or women's group who meet in different ways? This season is a perfect time to join in, and there's a bunch of things happening. And after the service, Carla is going to be at the info desk. So if you're like, well, what men stuff is there? What women stuff is there? Go to the info desk. Carla will help you navigate that. Our pastors will be in the lobby who will also assist you. And also, can I just highlight two more opportunities of courses that are starting this Tuesday. Our Alpha course and our Practicing the Way course, which both start on Tuesday. There's still time to join in, friends. These are spaces to ask big questions about life and faith, to share meals and to experience community. They are spaces to speak, to listen, to see, because we all have hopes that we carry. And who we hope the King to be matters how we live our lives. So in these spaces of breaking bread and blessing and caring for one another and hearing our journeys and coming together, we get to experience and know each other, but we're also learning that Christ is present in our midst. It's around the table, just like it was in Emmaus, that eyes are opened and Jesus is recognized. Friends, you need to know this. Jesus is still walking beside people who don't recognize him yet. He's still walking beside people who don't recognize him yet. He's also walking beside you in your most confusing and most joyful moments. So every time we gather here to share the bread and the cup, like at our communion, for example, we're doing exactly what those disciples did on the road to Emmaus. We're inviting a stranger in, we're slowing down, we're making room, and we're coming to the table together. It's here in the simple and ordinary act that Christ makes himself known to all of us. Meals matter. Hospitality matters, friends. Our culture is a place where we've been talked to or been taught that individualism and your own thing and your own insulation really matters, and just make yourself great. Build your rapport around who you are. And Jesus is like, community matters, community matters, community matters. And we know that. It's at the table, in the act of hospitality and generosity, that Christ is seen.